Okay, hello. It's so good to see you. I'm so happy that you have tuned in to our Thursday education presentation. My name is Danielle, and I am the education specialist here at the Turning Point Rape Crisis Center. So, um, let let's go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint. Okay, so this is our presentation. It takes you, Nati. It's a bystander's guide on being empowered and educated, because once we're educated about the problem, we can be the change to fix it and support survivors along the way. Here at the Turning Point, we have a 24-hour crisis hotline, which is 1-800-886-7273. And you can call this number at any time, day, season, holiday, etc. And there will be somebody who can answer the phone and be able to answer any questions you have revolving around sexual violence, and also getting involved with counseling, booking education presentations, and things of that nature. That brings me to our first point, which is what we offer, and that is counseling. We offer 110% free counseling for our survivors and their friends and family members, because we believe that you shouldn't have to pay for counseling after healing or trying to heal from such an intense trauma. And so, furthermore, we provide advocacy, and advocacy is where we go into the hospital and we provide advocacy through being there and supporting the survivor. We let them know their rights, we give them any resources, and we overall are just there to support the survivor. And also get them involved with counseling and things like that if they are there in that space at that time. Not everybody wants to get involved with counseling right away. Some people want some time to go by and then they get involved with counseling. You can get involved with counseling whether it's been years, months, or days. And then lastly, we offer education, which is this, where we go into the community and different online platforms and bring education to the roots and causes around sexual violence. We had a series called The Isms here on the Facebook. If you want to go back and check it out, we went over 6 different weeks of different isms like sexism, racism, so on and so forth, that correlate with sexual violence, because oppression and sexual violence are extremely positively correlated. And so where there's oppression, there is sexual violence. And so little things like that. If you always want more education, we always have these Thursday presentations, but they are also always recorded and linked on our Facebook. So let's go on and get into our mission. So our mission is to highlight the impact of sexual violence on individuals and our community through education programs that foster hope, encourage change, and prevent sexual violence. Join us in the fight against sexual violence. The Turning Point is committed to reducing the prevalence of sexual violence in our community. We firmly believe that for this change to occur, each person has a responsibility and must do their part to prevent sexual violence. So, this week's topic, healthy versus unhealthy relationships and boundaries. This is something that is so important to me, and I think that is so important for every person to know and tune in and understand. So, what is a relationship? A relationship means being connected to someone by kin, such as family, by interests, such as friends, or common goals, such as work colleagues, by romance, such as like boy, girlfriends, whatever. We will have a relationship. We also have pets. We have our colleagues. We have all these people that we will have a relationship with. And so that's why it's so important to understand relationships, because it's hard to get through life and not have a single relationship. So who do we have relationships with? So we have relationships with our mother, our father, brother, sister, grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, friends, teammates, neighbors, coaches, teachers, your caregiver, aide, work colleagues, boyfriends, girlfriends, and even pets, as I said. So it's extremely hard to get through life and not have a relationship, because if you don't have a significant other, you may have a pet. If you don't have a pet, you may have family members. If you don't have family members, then you may have colleagues. So there's always someone that you're going to have an interpersonal relationship with. So How do we learn about relationships? We often learn about relationships by observing how our family goes into relationships, how they act in relationship dynamics. We observe and take note, but we also learn about relationships from movies and media. What does media and movies say about relationships? I want to add this really great video of a therapist that's breaking down relationship dynamics and being able to look at it in a more positive light, because often we talk about media and the relationship dynamics in a way that is media represents relationships sometimes in negative ways. And so we want to be able to also exemplify the ways when media can show positive things or things that we can grow from. So. Okay.
Relationships in pop culture, especially romantic ones, tend to be idealized. So because of that, it often sets us up for unrealistic expectations, unfortunately. Hi, my name is Omar Torres. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in New York, and today we're going to be talking about some of the most influential romances in TV and movies and how they impact relationships today.
Ross, you had sex with another woman.
I thought we were broken up.
We were on a break.
That, for all I knew, could last forever. That, to me, is a break up.
In their relationship, they broke up and got together a lot.
Miss, isn't there any way that you can just let me off the...
No! Oh my God, did she get off the plane? Did she get off the plane?
I got off the plane.
You really want to make sure that anytime you get back together with an ex, if that's what you decide, that it feels like a brand new relationship. The last thing you want to do is bring baggage from, round 1, round 2, round 3 into the current relationship. I think it's going to set the both of you up for conflict and not healthy conflict. Jack and Rose. It is the quintessential, you meet someone and it's like a life-changing, life-altering love. And it's a young love. And it doesn't get the time that you wish it did get to flourish. Not all love is meant to stick around all that long, to be honest with you. And that's okay. As long as there's something that you can take away from it, it's still really, really significant. And sometimes one of the greatest things that you can do for a loved one is to let them go, which is sort of how I interpret this scene. She had to let him go, literally, otherwise she would die. So hopefully that's not the case in your relationship, but sometimes the best thing that you can do for your beloved, for yourself, for the relationship is to say goodbye.
Look, I don't care if you don't want to talk to me or not, but please get up and fix my breakfast. I need my strength. Lucy, are you going to fix my breakfast or not? What do you want me to do, starve to death? Would you please?
So here we see a pretty explicit example of gender roles with Ricardo essentially demanding that Lucy make him breakfast when he is up and dressed, so he can make the breakfast himself. But these were a sign of the times, so one thing that I find really interesting is Lucy's silent treatment. One of the questions that I'll ask someone when I notice them shut down is, what is the silence communicating? And in that moment, Lucy might say, I'm angry. And then I would have Ricky acknowledge and affirm the fact that she's angry and pissed off, and to talk about, what can I do to help make a repair? Some people really do need a cool down period, and that may have been what Lucy needed, which is also perfectly healthy. However, Lucy would have to communicate that need to Ricky.
Damn it!
It's a dog. What's he supposed to do? All your lying around here.
My
Is like a puzzle piece. It's not something that you necessarily figure out right away.
Don't you ever just shut up?
I'm going to take a walk.
The fact that at some point they knew this argument needed to stop because it was only escalating is like music to my ears.
Sorry.
So one of the things that I love about Harry Met Sally is that it's one of the few rom-coms of its time where the two protagonists meet and develop a friendship over decades before they ever get together. And one of the things that patients talk about in terms of meeting someone is that like lightning strike, choir singing, fireworks, like I know this is the one. Oftentimes relationships are a slow burn. Usually you meet someone and you simply ask yourself, do I want to see them one more time? And if the answer is yes, you see them one more time. And then you ask that question again. And eventually you ask that question over months and you find yourself saying, oh yeah, like I'm in a relationship with this person and I want to build a life with them. And oftentimes that's how it works. And that's totally fine too. It's something that grows and develops over time.
What I'm saying is, and this is not uncommon in any way, shape, or form, is that men and women can't be friends because the sex part always gets in the way.
Of course, they can be friends. I think what's important for the two individuals is to suss out friendship feelings and romantic feelings.
I was just afraid if you saw the kind of people I came from, you wouldn't want to be anywhere near me. See, that's where you're a dummy. I think about what you grew up with, and I look at what you are. It makes me proud.
The reason why I particularly love this scene and this relationship is that Tara gives voice to something that I think a lot of us have going on in the back of our heads, which is, if I show you the worst parts of me, will you still love me? I love Willow's response. Instead of saying, how could you think that you know I love you? She says, listen, knowing where you're from makes me all the more proud of who you've become. And what a great way of saying, I accept all of you. I accept the parts of you that you don't like. I accept the parts of you that you're not thrilled with, because relationships aren't a la carte. I'm gonna choose this, I'm gonna like this, and the rest I don't really want. We're all super, super complicated. We all come from histories that sometimes we're not super proud of. And finding that person that says, hey, tell me everything there is to know about you. Tell me about you, and I'll be here, is one of the most important messages that you can share in any relationship, actually. Ultimately, we all want to feel loved. We all want to feel connected. And don't be afraid of, your epic love story maybe being a unique one.
So I love that video because it brings about all these movies. I swear, if you haven't seen at least one of those movies in those videos, then I don't believe you. I don't believe you, because everybody has either watched Friends, saw When Harry Meets Sally, saw Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Like, all of these things are very extremely popular, and I love that they broke down different relationship dynamics and things that we see in our media, and be able to take something valid and have something come from it in a positive and productive way. So let's continue with the presentation. So, good relationships are based on respect and equality. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. So a woman in a healthy relationship and a man in a healthy relationship will have these same things underneath. For space efficiency, they're under both, but as I read them, these are for both. Okay, keep that in mind. So, is willing and able to make decisions about her activities, her future, and her family, speaks her mind in a relationship, refuses to do things that are uncomfortable, expects people to treat her with respect and affection even when they are angry or disappointed, expects an equal relationship where partners take turns giving and getting from each other, expects that any and all sexual behavior is consensual, knows that destructive relationships hurt her self-esteem and mental and physical well-being, and also knows that any violence is unacceptable. Next, respects others and does not try to control them, participates in discussions and negotiations and does not feel threatened when their partner voices opinions that are different than their own, compromises and realizes that they do not lose power or status if their way is not followed, also does not resort to threats, insults, or violence to get their way, knows that no means no and does not force sexual contact, can confront feelings of anger and frustration without taking them out on someone else, and knows that it is okay to feel sad and cry when overwhelmed with emotion, recognize that they, or specifically men, can be physically stronger than others, but does not use that strength to hurt, accepts an equal share of the responsibility needed to keep a relationship healthy, and then also accepts when a relationship ends and does not feel the need through power and control to keep the relationship going, and knows that any violence is unacceptable. So, before we get into this, 4 things you might really need to know if you might be in an abusive relationship, I want to share this video about unhealthy relationships.
So today I want to talk to you a little bit more about signs of mental and emotional abuse. This is such an important topic, and there are so many different signs that you can learn about that will help you to understand if you or somebody you know might be in one of these abusive relationships. I'm Dr. Sonia, and I'm a licensed clinical psychologist, and I've worked with many people who have struggled with their relationships and trying to determine if they should stay or they should go. And one of the things that I'm always concerned about is working with people who are in relationships that are unhealthy or abusive. And as a therapist, I really want to help them to understand and make a good decision about some of the signs they're seeing and support them, whether they want to try to set good boundaries in the relationship or whether they want to try to receive help to exit the relationship. So today I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about some of these signs. In addition to jealousy, one of the other things that an abusive partner, emotionally abusive partner, will do is try to monitor and control who you speak to and when you speak to them. And they may do this through going through your phone or your social media or your computer, or monitoring who you're spending time with and when you're spending time with these people. There's a big difference between concern and control. And if somebody wants to monitor every aspect of your life, they're probably more controlling than they are concerned about you. Mind games are a really common tool of people who are emotionally abusive. Basically, what they will do is try to make you deny your own reality. So, for example, they might say something, and then when you confront them about what they said, whether it was cruel or harsh or untrue, they'll deny ever saying it in the first place. And this has the effect of keeping you entirely off balance and really doubting your own reality and your own perception. Another common term for this behavior is gaslighting. And if you're with somebody who's gaslighting, it's super important to get help to set some really clear boundaries and decide if this is the type of relationship you want to be in. If you're in a long-term partnered relationship with someone who is emotionally abusive, you may find that they will exclude you from important family decisions. So basically what this does is it puts them in a position of power and leaves you feeling really isolated from the important dynamics of the family. It's a great way to control somebody and keep them from having an active voice in their own life and their own choices. In addition to excluding you from important family decisions, another classic technique of an emotionally abusive person is to control your access to finances, either through having you give them your money that you make, or if you are at home and you're not working, they may only allow you a small allowance, and they may monitor every financial transaction that you make. And the reason that they do this is really it's just another form of control and a way to keep you trapped in an unhealthy situation. Along with control, threats are a common technique of an abusive individual. Basically, they will threaten to leave you or divorce you anytime you try to set a boundary or to assert yourself or to express any displeasure with the way that they're treating you. Another strategy that an abuser will use is they will blame you for their bad behavior. So they may say something mean, they may do something cruel, and instead of taking responsibility for their own actions, they will say that somehow you were the cause of that behavior on their part. This is a very subtle but powerful tactic to control another person. If any of these signs we talked about today resonate with you, or if you recognize either yourself or someone else in an emotionally abusive relationship, I really encourage you to reach out for help. There are many licensed counselors who can basically help you determine if you are in an abusive relationship. And if you choose to stay in the relationship, help you set boundaries. And if you choose to leave the relationship, help you with all of the emotions and feelings that will arise around this difficult decision. If you like this video, please feel free to subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Okay, so I felt like that video was important to share from a therapist's perspective on an emotionally abusive relationship, because oftentimes when we talk about abusive relationships, we go straight into physical or very extreme tactics, and a lot of times people who are in more abusive relationships or toxic relationships are like, oh, well, it's not that, so it must not be anything, I must just be overreacting. Whenever these things don't always have to be to the extreme. It doesn't have to be level 10. It could be level 7. And if level 7 is too much, then you can exit the situation for your own safety, for your own mental health, and that's perfectly fine and perfectly valid. So let's continue. So 4 things you really need to know when you might be in an abusive relationship. You are not alone. So our society often glorifies violence in movies, TV, books. We talked about this, but looks the other way when people we know become victims of violence or abuse, especially victims of interpersonal or sexual violence. Many people are so ashamed of being battered or otherwise abused that they will not tell even their closest friends what is happening to them. Abusive people often isolate victims or threaten harm if anyone is told. It is easy to think that you are the only person in an abusive relationship, but there are many among us who are dealing with abuse. Abuse is not your fault. You made me do it. You pressed my buttons. You need to learn who's boss. All too often, an abuser will blame the victims for the abuse. The guilt trips or blame placed on victims of abuse are a tremendous burden and cause low self-esteem and poor self-image. After all, if somebody puts you down all the time, you may start to believe it. Abusers are always responsible for their decisions and actions. Abuse is never the victim's fault. If it feels scary, it's abuse. If someone touches you in a personal way that feels scary or bad or wrong to you, then it's abuse. If someone tries to make you do something you don't feel comfortable doing, even after you say so, then it's abuse. If someone tells you that you're stupid or childish or worthless because you would not do something they want you to do, then it is abuse. Abuse is always about the other person's need to control you. You have the right not to be abused. And if you saw in that second to last sentence, it's about the person's need to control you. This is a common theme in all of our topics, whether it's about the isms or bullying, so on and so forth. Sexual violence and violence in general is linked to a person's need and want to exert their power and control over you. And that is a them problem, not a you problem. So get some help and support for yourself. Let's face it, there is a lot of pressure on each of us to be in a relationship. We socialize together in groups and hang out in couples, and sometimes we put pressure on other people or on ourselves to be in a relationship, as though we're not okay if we're single. And that's wrong. Abusive relationships are not healthy. They stress us out, They take our energy away from ourselves and other people who we love. If you think you might be abused, talk about it with someone you trust, a family member, a friend, or a professional. Boundaries. I love talking about boundaries, and I really want to show this really cute video. I'm only going to show a clip of it about boundaries, and it's another one where it's a therapist reacts, and it's the Disney movie. So this one is relatable for everybody, because if you haven't watched a single Disney movie, I don't believe you. So let's watch this video really quick. I always try and get through the ad first.
And then this one.
Okay, so now we're going to watch this clip of the video of therapists reacting to different Disney relationships, and this one is going to be on Beauty and the Beast. So let's go ahead and get started with it.
So like to make out with me.
All right, so Belle is the social outcast. She's the bookworm. And then this prince guy, Beast, was once handsome, but he was mean and he was cruel. And then this lady turns him into a big, like, boar, kind of boar creature thing. And then the only way to break the curse is to learn to love a woman. Basically, he holds Belle captive in his creepy old castle, and every time they fall in love, and the curse is reversed.
If you hadn't frightened me, I wouldn't have run away.
Well, you shouldn't have been in the West Wing.
Well, you should learn to control your temper.
In some ways, you wonder if this is this an abusive relationship? With that aside, just looking at the evolution that people can have in relationships where they're changing and they might be softening, they let their guard down a little bit more. I think that happens in every relationship where there is an evolution of change. And this is interesting because she's putting up boundaries for, like, right here.
Oh yeah, totally. This movie often gets kind of compared to, like, the stories of Stockholm Syndrome, where people fall in love with their jailer. But that's not what's happening here. She's definitely, like, making her choices, and it's not because she's being manipulated or gaslit. She had her moment where she could have been like, hey, I'm free. I can go back to my dad if I want to. But no, she load him up on that horse?
She's hopped up on adrenaline, obviously. She was just being attacked by wolves. She's all hopped up on adrenaline.
There's love here, but it's been earned, right? It's been earned and learned, not just, oh, you're a good singer. And technically it's without sex, right? There's no kiss before their love is made official.
Yeah, so here's one of the interesting parts about this is that the whole idea is that he needs to fall in love, right? And or like win her love by learning to love a woman, learning to love an individual. And if he can do that, then he can change. And I actually like that idea that it's within his control. Does that make sense? Because I think too often in relationships, we feel like in order for a relationship to go well, then our partner has to change. And in order for him to change, he has to focus on himself and focus on loving another person. And I actually really appreciate that the locus of control is within himself.
Well, and it also suggests that love is a skill that can be learned and can be developed. And in the end, we also know that love is transformative, which is something we haven't quite seen yet, except maybe with Ariel's legs. But I mean, this literally changes him from the inside out. And again, I think that comes from Belle's strength, not necessarily his remarkable work, but kind of what they craft together.
Something that I think you're alluding to is this idea that when you find a person, that person has the ability to change you. And one thing that we look at as therapists is we look at security of how you feel. So there's like these different attachment styles, right? You have like a secure attachment style, an insecure attachment style, an anxious attachment style, avoidant attachment style, whatever it might be. And the theory behind it is that if you are not secure, which the vast majority of people are secure, securely attached, but if you're anxiously attached or avoidantly attached, if you partner with someone who is secure, over time, your attachment style can actually change and you yourself can become secure. And I think that's like the transformation that can happen when you find that person. You can change. So Zach, what do you think the relationship is, or the purpose of having all of these antiques in the house? What's the relationship? What are they there for?
Well, I mean, I think that's a great question, because as I was watching it, I was noticing that the candlestick Lumiere is actually playing therapist, and that's actually, these characters exist throughout all these movies, right? You've got kind of the birds and Snow White, and you've got in Little Mermaid, you've got Sebastian and Scuttle. All of these Disney movies have these tertiary helpers that I think represent different facets of whether it's our social network, or even like Rafiki in Lion King is playing therapist even without playing therapist in the movie.
I love you. Here, you're actually watching the petals fall, and I don't know if the petals are falling on a daily basis, but we don't actually know how much time, but you know that time has passed and this relationship has evolved over time, and that's definitely something that's different.
It's not a story of this kiss will cure you. It's more like, again, what we've been saying, sort of learning to love another will cure you, cure him in this case.
All right, so it's Bob and Helen Parr.
So I thought that one was important to share, because I think Disney movies are so relatable, especially when you get older and you look back on them and you're like, oh my goodness, there was such a deeper meaning here that I can pull as an adult. And so with Beauty and the Beast and their evolving of a relationship and learning how to love each other and learning how to respect and adhere to one another's boundaries is so incredible and so important to talk about. I think it was great how they mentioned how the antiques and stuff were helping them in their journey. And I think that that's another thing that's really important. Always lean on your social people around you who know you the best, your friends, your family members, the people who know you and love you won't try and lead you astray. So if they're saying, hey, this is a cause for concern, then maybe lean into that. Or if they're like, this is awesome, and they're excited, then, lean into that as well. And so it's always kind of important to kind of gauge how our family is reacting to this as well, because sometimes our loved ones can see things that we don't necessarily see. So getting into boundaries. So what is a boundary? So a boundary is a line, a limit of a subject you're willing to talk about, or a limit of things that you're willing to do. So examples of boundaries. I want to hear about your day. I'll be free to give you my full attention in 15 minutes. I'm not willing to argue with you. I will hang out with you, but I will not gossip about other people. I really enjoy holding your hand while walking together, but I don't want to kiss you, only say goodbye. I like you, but I don't enjoy hugging people. Please stop asking for hugs. So these are different examples of ways that we can conversationally use boundaries to enforce our line and where our line in the sand of what we are and aren't comfortable with. Examples of boundaries that we set. So physical contact. I don't like to hug people unless I know them well. Keeping your personal space. I don't like when people I don't know touch me or get really close to me, or I prefer someone asks to borrow my things before taking them. Language. I prefer not to use cuss words when talking to people. These are all types of boundaries that we set. So boundary crossing is bringing up physical contact. Someone I didn't know well came up to me and hugged me, or keeping your personal space. Someone touches your arm to get your attention, or someone takes part of your lunch without asking. And language. Someone starts using cuss words to talk about another person while you're hanging out with them. That's an example of boundary crossing. So it's important to acknowledge that personal space and things like that are different around the world. So when we're talking about boundaries, we also want to acknowledge that culturally different things are appropriate and other things aren't appropriate. So each person has and will have different personal boundaries, and that's okay. Everyone's boundaries are valid and need to be respected. And if you're dealing with someone of a different culture or in a space in a different culture, make sure to kind of look up or ask what is and isn't acceptable so that you're not making someone uncomfortable. So any questions? If you have any questions, always feel free. always feel free to leave them down below. You can always call our 24-hour crisis hotline also if you have any questions revolving around sexual violence. And with that being said, I will see you in my next video. I post every Thursday. I go live every Thursday at 10 a.m. and I will see you next week. Bye.